This year, it sort of leads us full circle and back in, and we find, we've spent so much time trying to get out of this thing. We finally have a way out. It's destroyed, and we are here now. And we find out that we're stuck here with something that is going to be the death of us all. And it's pushing all of our characters. It's taking each one of these characters to their ugliest sides. It's bringing out the worst in a lot of people, and so naturally you can imagine the experiences that Barbie's had in life, a lot of the military experiences. There's a lot of anger and darkness kind of stored up in there that gets exacerbated and preyed upon. Last year was certainly high intensity, high adrenaline, lots of boom, bang, pow stuff happening. But I think that the common cry among people was that they just wanted to see, they loved the characters on the show, and they wanted to see these people sit down and have a scene together. And stuff is crazy enough as it is in the circumstances that are already surrounding this town. Let's see how our people react within that. And they've done that this year. It's a lot more character focused, and I think flows a lot more smoothly this year. They came up with this idea of Barbie and Julia meeting in that during that 1 year experience, and so that was believable to me that they meet there. Can their relationship that was started and established there, if you do real time on how long we've been under this dome, it's been maybe a month. Now, certainly in chaotic situations, things get deep quick, they intensify, gets passionate, and some really strong ties are formed. But could what Barbie and Julia have stand up to a year of relationship with this girl in a war zone as well? That's the interesting thing to see here. When they mentioned this year that they were going to sort of test the Barbie Julia of it all, and bring a love triangle into this thing, I kind of went, because it's tricky bringing in a town where no one can get in and no one can get out, and you're going to introduce some magical lady that we've not yet seen or heard from, and she's going to be amazing enough to pull me away from Rochelle. I don't know about that. What attracted me to Barbie was I have a lot of family members and a lot of friends that have come out of the Special Forces community. So this character there was certainly a soft spot for me to see him done right. I didn't want to see him taken to that place of being the repentant, unstable victim that I think a lot of times these guys can be portrayed as. So many of my buddies that have come back are, unless you sleep next to them at night, you'd never know that there was any scars. They're just badasses that can compartmentalize. And given that side of Barbie, I from day one when I read the first script before we started filming, I liked his chances under the dome. So he's always been an exciting guy to play for me. I think the instability going on around the world right now, there's also there's a voyeuristic quality to it. It's what entertainment does for us. It allows us to kind of dip our toe in the water and see, without having to actually experience the calamity, to fantasize about how we think we would act. The dome is just a device that isolates us, and it's like putting a bunch of beta fish in a fish bowl and watching them go at it. And it's the interesting thing about life, I think, is that so often we like to look at the hero or look at the villain and go, well, I would be that guy and I wouldn't be that guy. And quite often it's the one with the most bravado that you would think that's the guy I'm following, that he's the one that's under a table cowering somewhere. And that's what I love about situations like this, and I think that that's what an audience resonates with, is how would I react. It's certainly an unbelievable situation, but there's a lot of stuff happening around the world that's not too far off right now.
Season 2 to season 3 has really been about Julia putting away not just certain parts of herself, but putting away entire positions. You get to be a certain way as an adult, along the journey, and we've created these characters where along the way you take a position, you take a stance, and you think that that's who you are. And she has had to let go this season of all of that. And she gets it wrong. And she does some things she makes some questionable choices and gets called on it by other characters and ends up having to apologize a lot for the redirection. You definitely get a new version of Julia this season. But it's the version of Julia that you get is not different because who she is changes. It's different because who she isn't going to serve her anymore. I think there's a moment where she goes, okay, all the lines that I've drawn for myself, all the boundaries that I've created, all the things that I've gone, this is black, this is white, this is right, this is wrong. If I adhere to those, I'm not going to survive. I'm not going to get out. And I think that there's a choice that has to be made, and everybody is willing to sacrifice a different part of themselves for a different end. And it's a lot of now the end justifies the means. So you get a different Julia. I like to think that what resonates is that we've managed to create characters that people care about, that are invested in. You know, if we don't do that successfully, then the truth is it doesn't matter what the rest of the journey is. Whether we get out of the dome or not is only an interesting question. If you care about the people who are trapped, if you feel connected to them some way, if you feel invested in whether or not they get out, if whether or not a character dies matters to you. You know, we can't put characters in life and death situations and have that be compelling television unless we've created characters that you want them to stick around, or you loathe them so much that you're waiting to watch them meet their end. And so I would have to attribute the success, hopefully, to our attempts as a cast to constantly try to create real relationships and really just dig deeper and deeper into who these characters are, and try to portray something honest, even when we're doing things that are kind of pushing the boundaries of reality. I think that one of the things that I was waiting for as a fan of sci-fi and as a big Stephen King fan was for the show to be even darker than it has been. And I think that we get that this season. I think it's really important for our show to sort of burrow deeper into the darkness with each season. And we're definitely doing that. I also think that it being a new kind of story allows for people to get on board who haven't seen the first and second season. I think they realize that it's a show that people are talking about. It's kind of out there in the zeitgeist. People are curious, and if they haven't watched the show, they're going, you know, can I sort of join? I would have said no, second season. I would have said you have to watch the first season to be a part of the second season. I still think that's true. This season, it's like a whole other, same characters, a lot of the same continuing struggles, but the premise is completely different. I knew that they were hoping to do this. I didn't know if they were going to be able to. I didn't know if given where our show has been for the first 2 seasons, if they were going to let them shift something that dramatically. I didn't know if CBS was going to be as ballsy as they're being to be like, yeah, okay, go run with that. And so there's a lot of moments where not only when I get the script do I go, oh, amazing, they're going to let us do that, but also walking onto set and seeing some of the worlds that they've created and seeing some of these environments and going, oh, I get to work in here today, and kind of looking around and being like, this is amazing. I can't believe they're letting us do this. I think there are a couple of really strong reasons to watch season 3. The first is season 1 and season 2 have absolutely been building to this. Where the dome came from and why it's here is no longer a teaser. We're dealing with it. We're living. I'm filming right now. We're living that. So you will absolutely get the answers to that. And so I think that's why people should stay with us, because if you've been with us this long, come get your answers, would be what I would say. And then for people who've just heard about it and gone, oh, I have friends who like the show, or I keep hearing about this show and I haven't seen it, I would say dive in, because now's your chance to get a fresh start. Can you go online and watch season 1 and season 2? Absolutely. Do I, as a person who's a fan of things, do I recommend being caught up? Yes. But if you're not the person who likes to go back and binge watch, if you just want to know about getting on board, now's your chance, because season 3 is the reboot. It's the reset for all of why we're here and what we're doing. And so I would say to those people, come check it out. It's an awesome world we've created.
What surprised me the most, and it's in a good way, is that they've really brought a lot of the kind of dark humor back to the show. I think that's really at the heart of what Stephen King is often, and I love that element of it. So I think there still is the kind of seriousness of certain topics, but particularly in the Big Jim character, there's a dark humor that's allowed to percolate out, which I think is fun to watch.
The interesting thing about this season is we get some answers finally. So the first 2 seasons were just a setup to this season, because now we're going to find out where the dome came from, why it's there, whether it's good or evil, and so that's a lot of fun. It's just like a freight train that we start in the first episode and just kind of cranks right through. All of the hints and things that we talked about in the first 2 seasons with the egg and whether it's alien form or where it's from, all those questions get answered this year. And Christine Price, played by Marg, is a big part of helping us figure all that stuff out. So yeah, we do. We get the answers to the things you've been worried about. I think the fans will be really satisfied and excited. What's going to happen has been described to me as a kind of a war of the worlds, and it's Big Jim against this evil empire, and they've described it to me in this way. They was so when they told me, I was so excited. They're like, this alien force has never encountered somebody as crazy and narcissistic as Big Jim, so they're not quite sure how to deal with him. And I thought that was so cool and also funny. And it was exactly the spirit you want in a big, kind of popcorn summer show. So I'm hoping that works out, and I think it will. And we get to see Big Jim in all his glory, kind of fighting the bad guys. Everybody, quite frankly, succumbs to this crazy life force, except for Big Jim and Julia, presumably because they didn't make the leap into whatever all the rest of the town followed Barbie to do. So they are able to see this life force for what it is, and it's not necessarily a benign thing. And so those two are able to kind of look and go, wait a minute, this is a problem, and we need to somehow defeat this, this life force. So I mean, other than the fact, I think Big Jim didn't succumb because he's just so narcissistic that he defeats his own brain, defeats the community kind of life force that they're trying to create. And I'm not sure how Julia does, but we'll find out. Big Jim is stuck with Julia under the dome, and they have not been best of friends in the past. But again, tragedy makes strange bedfellows. They may have to get together in order to survive, and that's something that we explore this season. It's actually a really interesting part about Big Jim is he kind of realizes how much fun is it to be the king if you have no subjects. So in a way, it's what motivates Big Jim to try yet again to save the town, because he's such a narcissist, which I love about him, that what fun is that if he just has nobody to follow him? So it also helps, it's a motivation for him to try to save the town, and he does, or he does his best.
In the way that making plans for the future can get shot down in the best of circumstances when you're living under extreme circumstances like the way the characters on this show are, it's almost impossible to think long term. I think these guys are in situations where, at every given moment they're faced with, are they going to live or are they going to die? And that's, that can change your Thursday plans real quick.
Junior, last year, he shot his father, and that was a big step for him to finally let go of him and release him. And so he comes into this season, it's him, Julia, and possibly Big Jim still around, and they're not sure if he's up there bleeding to death at first, and then they find out he's still alive. And Junior and Julia get split up in these caves, and Junior gets tricked by Melanie, Grace's character, into going into this kind of white light and into these cocoons, and he's injected into this alternate reality that was going on without him. But then he is put into it, and everyone starts remembering that he was there all along, and it's like it was all reprogrammed into their mind. And so after they find out this alternate reality isn't real and they emerge from the cocoons, he's horrified and terrified that he's back with his father that he thought he could finally run away from. And he pretty much was dead in his own mind. So he's coming back to hell in a way, trying to find the reasoning behind his kind of somewhat erratic behavior. It's like, it always comes from like a place of needing to fill this gap of love that he doesn't have, and the abandonment issues with his mother, and all of that. And he's been lied to and manipulated. So, and look at his father. His father's a murderer and a maniac and like egomaniac too. So, of course, Junior's not going to end up like the most grade A student, like ideal citizen, I guess. So, yeah, he's very much a byproduct of his father and that life.
Some of the answers about, how, what was the genesis of all of this, and who is, Acteon, this dark, mysterious force. Is it, like, Halliburton, is it like one of the big military contractors, that, which it kind of ultimately is, and who are they using, and who are they, what is their ultimate goal, and how does, so it's kind of like, man against, not against man against nature, but it's also man against, the otherworldly force that's entered.
What's fun this season is that Barbie, Junior, Sam, Joe, and Nori, and Hunter find themselves in a matrix. So what seems like a year turns out to be a day where they've been cocooned. And they're being cocooned so that they can be transformed from individuals with their individual fears and needs to members of the group. And Mark Helgenberger's character, Christine, is leading the group because she has reasons. She has a mission to get everyone to be group-minded to bring the dome down. But in order to be group-minded, our characters have to be alienized a little bit, and they lose their individuality, whereas Big Jim and Julia are still themselves hating each other, but having to fight that battle. We screwed with time in the Matrix, although we see Big Jim and Julia during the day in the first episode in reality. So they're in reality, but our other characters are in this super saturated, beautiful world. The Sweet Briar is now this beautiful diner. There's plenty of food. Life goes on. There's a memorial to everybody, but it's all a story. It's all been conjured up by the Dome to get everybody to drop their problems and work towards the future and the group. And it almost happens, but then Big Jim destroys the egg just before it all is going to happen. And so now Marg's character has to it's like a boat that keeps springing leaks. She's got to like tamp down their individuality to get them in this group in order to get them on course to save themselves when the Dome starts to have problems of its own. I think this love triangle with Barbie, in love literally with two women intensely and equally, is something that we don't really see. It's not that he's tired of Julia, it's that he mourned her death and then met someone else, and it's just tearing him up. And we'll see what happens to him in his journey. So I think that's something to follow because you just don't know who's he going to go with. And it's tough for Julia. And Julia and Big Jim, who were enemies, know your enemies. Well, these two get thrown together, which we love, because we are going to see them working together a lot this season. And there's a lot of sparks, but they have the same agenda as well. They're the only two who were not cocooned and didn't get the life force put in them. And so they know that terrible things are going on and they're trying to figure out how to stop this. And so that's fun to see, like, can they do it? And then Joe is in the middle, kind of alienized, kind of not, and what's going to happen with him. And the ones who are pulled to the really dark side, like Junior and Sam, we see, is there any hope for them? What's going to happen? Are they just going to do Christine, Marg's character's bidding? So there's a lot of conflict and new stories that are presented with, importantly, answers. We're going to see exactly why the Dome came down this year.
We'll get to see a different side of Big Jim. We'll get to see why he sees the world the way that he does. And we'll get to see a side of Julia that's much darker and more complex than we've seen before. She is someone who, fell in love with the man who shot her husband. There might be some damage and darkness there to explore. And then with Big Jim, someone who has that fundamental, drive to always be number one, to always succeed. He's exactly the kind of ally you want going into a war, a potential war, with an enemy that wants to wipe you off the face of the planet.